Hey everyone, and welcome to this video about tools for web development. I've had this website, wintermutedigital.com, for quite a few years now. It's home to a lot of resources that I put up occasionally, and it's gone through a few iterations over the years. As I've come to learn more about web development and tried various technologies out there, I've changed the things I've used to build my website. This video will be an overview of the tools that I found useful over the years, what they do, and why I'm using them. I don't want to prescribe a set of tools, so while this video will focus on one particular toolchain, I'm also going to describe the names of these things so you can find alternatives. If you're interested in front-end web development, that should serve as a good overview of all the tools that you'll need to create a website of your own. So we'll start at the top with Gatsby and work our way down the toolchain to understand how everything fits together. Gatsby is a framework for static site generation. If we break that down, a framework is a bundle of code that basically implements generic behaviors that you can build around. It has tools for routing, where you connect pages within a website, media, which optimizes the loading of images, videos, and audio, Markdown, which is a broad text-based way of generating and writing content, and many more things. It has plugins, custom themes, data querying, and testing tools. It's a very powerful set of systems that ultimately support static site generation. A static site is the simplest kind of website, and the static part just means that the website is generated based on data that's already there, and has been explicitly written by the developer. The other kind of a website is a dynamic site, which is generated on the fly based on behaviors of the server or interactions from the user. For example, liking this video might make YouTube show it to more people, and subscribing will make new videos show up on your feed. Reddit is also a good example of the latter, since it's constantly updated and shaped to the user, while most blogs are a good example of the former. So there are many alternatives, and if you look up static site generator, you'll find many different options to suit your needs. Now, to use Gatsby, there are two more things we need to add to our toolchain: React and GraphQL. GraphQL is a background tool, a query language used to get data from any database and return it. You send a request, and it will use that request to search through a database and then return the data that you asked for. For example, we can use the Pokemon API at pokeapi.co and send it a query that looks like this. While it looks complicated, it just specifies the kind of data that we want and the shape of this data, like this block, for example. The ability and name nesting suggests that we'll return a data object called abilities, which consists of multiple ability objects, potentially multiple, maybe just one, and each of those ability objects will contain a name field, and you can see that reflected in the data that's returned. This sort of tool means that we can gather data from any arbitrary API or database for, say, satellite positions, weather, blog posts, or indeed Pokeberries. Gatsby integrates with GraphQL to grab this data and then manipulate it. GraphQL lets us filter queries as well as group the results, and we can do a lot of interesting things with them. So now that we have the data, we'll have to think about how to display it to the user, since raw JSON is not exactly very readable. This is done with React. React is a front-end tool, a JavaScript library used for creating user interfaces. Now, I said that Gatsby was a framework before, and a library is pretty much the same thing, providing generic tools to solve generic problems, except that in a library you get to call the library's functions, whereas in a framework, the framework calls your functions. Since React is a library, you can add it incrementally to a project, and you won't have to convert everything all at once. We can use React to build a complete UI design using a component structure and control the data flow between them. React has tools to control data, including passing data between components, storing it, and creating side effects on lifecycle changes, as well as conditionally rendering things or rendering things through loops and building forms. As a small example, here's a little thing I've been working on to generate pixel art palettes. It's based on React, and you can see that I have a console component, just a stylized HTML text field, which passes a string, processes it, and then generates circle components based on the various commands I give. Note that it doesn't use Gatsby or GraphQL because it doesn't have any use for them. This is just a single page static site, so it doesn't really need to link or load images, so I don't really need GraphQL or Gatsby for this. Of course, you could also do all of this with vanilla.js. You don't really need React either, but there are a lot of advantages to React. Without it, you'd have to manually update the page by searching through the DOM for updated components, and any slight modifications to the page would require a lot of repetitive hard coding. React is far more flexible and much more maintainable than vanilla.js, and the paradigm of building things from components is a very nice design pattern. It's used by practically everyone, and so you might have heard of a few small websites that use it, like Facebook or Netflix. Anyways, now that we've taken the raw data and transformed it into a web page, we get to style our page, which is one of the parts I find most fun. So to recap, we have Gatsby, which manages the higher level behaviors of a website like linking and serving media, and we can query for data from a database using GraphQL, shape that data into modular components with React, and now we have to style them. So we don't always need Gatsby and GraphQL if you don't need to create a complex website with databases that you're querying from, and we can do a lot of these things in pure React. Anyhow, we still need to make it pretty. BulmaCSS is a CSS framework that is both modular, consistent, as well as cross-platform. So it comes with a set of consistently styled and highly customizable CSS styles that can be used to set up your site in a really aesthetically pleasing way. There are a large number of styled components like buttons, nav bars, dropdowns, and modals which you can customize to your heart's content, and all you have to do is write a bit of the logic and connect your nicely shaped data from React into the style, and you'll instantly get a beautifully stylized component. I use it in practically everything, but there are a ton of alternatives like Tailwind CSS and Material UI. Again, you can do this completely in vanilla CSS, but that's kind of a pain. You have to worry about overrides, and you have to understand how to use Flexbox, which, well, that's a rat hole I'm not particularly concerned with going down. So I'll conclude this video by vivisecting my website. It has text tutorials that complement nearly every video I've made and more, and is built using this stack of tools that I've described. So my posts are written in Markdown, and I have a local database, that is a folder of Markdown files with images that are stored together in a really poorly considered file structure. I use GraphQL to request blog posts along with data like the title, date, number of words, say, and some custom parameters like an excerpt or difficulty of a tutorial. It'll return an object which I can squeeze into a React component and then build around. It also handles the display of images, automatically lazy loading them to make the whole site extremely fast. Now the whole website uses a hierarchy of React components, and I can use some pretty interesting tricks to make it work. Since I'm pretty bad at backend and creating GraphQL queries, instead of filtering the actual query, I can use a different React option. My tag-based filtering option doesn't modify the query itself to filter things by tags, but rather it uses an if statement to conditionally render only the cards associated with the selected tags. It's not the most efficient, but it works, and I'm happy with it. Finally, Bulma is used to style everything consistently. The tutorial card components are technically just an ordered list, or an unordered list rather, stored in a rather complicated but appealing way. Now, I'm still working on it because I have to create a lot of aliases and a bunch of other tweaks, but when I'm done, it will replace my former site, which is built in Hugo, another static site generator, which I find quite a bit less flexible than React. Anyways, I hope you have a better understanding of what to learn to build general websites after watching this video. When starting out with web development, it's super easy to get lost, and not understanding what I don't know is how I've ended up in the weeds for quite a long time. Hopefully you have a wider understanding of the web development environment now, and the kinds of tools available, as well as what they do. I'll get back to game development after this video, and I apologize for it being a month late due to an interesting exam season, but now that that's over, I'll spend a bit more time working on things for the future. If you found this video useful, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like to tell the YouTube algorithm to dynamically update the page, and the database to tell that this video is worth watching, or of course a dislike if you found that it was full of nonsense. Drop a comment about what mistakes I've made, recommendations, fixes, and ideas for future videos, and subscribe to be notified when I post. Also, I have a Discord now. Thank you for the recommendations to build one, and feel free to join. I hope everyone has a good 2021, hopefully better than this year, and I'll see you soon.